Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining me in this session, Open Source at Scale, or what I've learned in 1 year working on the React Native team. First disclaimer, I'm not here to convince you to use React Native versus insert any other cross-platform framework name here. I know there is a Flutter track at this conference, so I probably don't stand a chance alone, but I'm here to share my experience building a framework which is used by millions of developers and is powering products which are used by billions of users. So at this scale, we are faced with some typical sort of traffic and bandwidth problems, which not all the open source projects out there are facing, and today I'm here to talk about that. Mandatory slide about myself. I'm actually an Android engineer in the React core team. You can find me online as Corti Nico on Twitter and on GitHub. So how many of you know what this is? Awesome, what is it?
Linux, Apache, something begins with N, and Python.
It's, yeah, more or less right. It's Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. It's a popular, I would say, give me the term legacy maybe, web stack, which, well, is all open source. And it turns out that, well, a lot of popular products are built on top of this stack. Like, people are making businesses out of it. And I love to say, like, really, whenever I think about open source, my motto is, we stand on the shoulder of giants, the shoulder as those one. And I keep on repeating to people that speak to me that we get so much from open source, but we don't get back enough. Like, literally. There is always opportunity to share, to give back to the community, to give back to the open source ecosystem. But sometimes you actually might be that giant. And, well, when you are the giant, you have some sort of responsibilities. So today I'm here to talk to you about how we handle a project that has more than 100,000 stars on GitHub and millions of weekly downloads. And to talk about it, actually I want to walk you through what is the life cycle of an open source project, going through the classical phases, which are like just an idea, so how we get started, how do we prepare it to be open sourced, how do we launch it and make it available to the public? How do we let it grow and reach maturity? And finally, well, what happens after? What happens after the open source projects? So let's get started from the idea. So at Meta, the company that develops React Native, and a lot of other popular open source projects, a lot of those projects are actually starting from hackathons. And yeah, like React Native was just an hackathon project. Someone thought like, hey, we have React, like people on web are liking it. How about we try to make Android and iOS apps from it? And yeah, from that point, from that hackathon, reaching what we called production level open source, well, it's a long journey. But one thing that we strive to do at Meta is release open source software which is, again, production ready. Like all the libraries that we open source are libraries that are used inside our product, being Facebook, Instagram, Oculus, and so on. And really, like, it's not that we open source things for the sake of, oh, let me prototype something and let me throw it out just to show how I think things should be done. No, this is code that runs in production in our app. React, Flipper, Litho, and so on. Those are like foundational libraries of our applications. So now we have the idea, and well, we have a prototype, and we want, like, we start building around it, and we want to prepare it. Like, we want to release this library to the open source community. And here, in an organization like ours, well, there are some complexities which I want to touch on. So at Meta, we actually build from source. Like, we have a huge monorepo which contains all the dependencies And yeah, all the code is there, all the code that we write, all the code that we get from open source. And we build actually from main. Like there is not even a concept of a version within the monorepo because you have all the code there. Well, how do you make this work in open source? Because people outside, they don't want source code. They want bundled libraries, versions that they can pin, they can download, and just build their simple code with it. So we have two models to offer teams within Meta to do open source. And it all depends on what you consider your source of truth. The first model is the GitHub first, which works in this way. You have your code hosted on GitHub. So whenever someone, like an external contributor, sends you a pull request, it will run on GitHub, it will run some continuous integration suite, and then if everything is green, you're gonna merge it, okay, everyone is happy, it creates a commit on Git, on GitHub. You might have several commit, and then at some point, you're gonna sync that code internally, like that code needs to arrive inside the monorepo. And you hope that by the time the code arrives in the monorepo, it doesn't break our internal tests, and so on. This is really natural. But we have another model that is a little bit more complicated, which is called the FB source first, which looks like this. So whenever we receive a pull request on GitHub, we run the CI, okay, everything is green. Well, since it's not GitHub first, we can't merge it. We're gonna import it inside our monorepo. We're gonna run the CI there, it's green. We're gonna create a commit internally. Then when the commit has been created, we're gonna go on the pull request, we're gonna close the pull request, and we're gonna create, oh, actually, the animation was skipped. Let me get back to it. So yeah, we're gonna go on GitHub, we're gonna close the pull request that you created, we're gonna create a commit on main on your behalf and tell you, hey, your pull request has been closed. It's not because you're a bad guy, but actually we added a commit on main, you are the author, and you find it there. Why I'm telling you this? Because, yeah, letting a big org, like again, thousands of lines of code run with some areas of the monorepo which are actually exposed outside is complicated. There is a lot of custom infrastructure, and letting these two worlds, the open source world and the internal world, coexist introduces a lot of complexity. Our syncing mechanism is actually also open source. You can find it on Facebook/FBShipIt. And a lot of complexities on this like duality of the open source versus internal ends up falling on the shoulders of our build tools. And the problem here is, again, that things internally and externally are not the same. Actually, internally, we use a build tool which is called Buck, and has its own like logic. It's actually open source, but externally, for example, for React Native, we expose a Gradle build. So we want users to use Gradle. Here, as you can imagine, there are like a couple of challenges. First, we want to make sure that the two builds are aligned. Again, we don't want to push Buck on the shoulders of open source people. Like, we can't expect people outside of Meta to use the tool that we use internally, even if they are open source. We want to make sure that we are like harmonized with the like target platform where we ship our code. But also, well, if your code is gonna run inside Buck, once you send me a pull request, I need to tell you somehow, like, hey, your code will not run inside the Facebook monorepo. How do we do that? So we have like an external CI signal that tells you like, hey, this code will create problems for Buck. So there is a lot of like, double maintenance, which is introducing, again, complexities for us. And like some of the prerequisites, aside the build tools and the code syncing, which I talked about, is having like a stable CI, like a stable CI signal and test coverage. So it's crucial that when you go open source, you have some tests. Like when you receive a pull request and there are no tests. Most of the time you have no idea what the code is doing, and it's impossible for you to actually just review it. You must, like in the worst case scenario, you will have to check out the branch and test it manually, which is like introducing a lot of friction. So make sure that your project has good test coverage. But apart from all of these infrastructure bits, like the intention of doing open source should be like a commitment from your team. Like people should be on board that you're about to release something in the open and you need to have capacity for it. So there will be issues open, there will be pull requests, someone will have to take a look at that. You don't want your project to get abandoned just after the start. So I like to say that open source is a tech challenge, but it's also a people challenge. There is a lot of culture that needs to be built, and like people that work like in their silo internally, they need to be exposed to GitHub, and they need to know how to work on GitHub. They need to know what is the etiquette over there. So great, then you're done. Your team is on board, your infra is ready to build internally and externally, you have good tests. Awesome, now it's time to go to market. And again, going to market means having good marketing, like advocating for your project. So what do we do? Generally, whenever we launch a project, especially if we believe there is going to be like some traction in the ecosystem, we write a blog post. This is the launch blog post of React Native several years ago. And if you're lucky enough, you're gonna end up on the first page of Hacker News and Product Hunt. Awesome stuff. Well, what happens next? Well, people will start trying your project and opening issues of all sorts, asking you questions, and so on. And yeah, managing them is a challenge, trust me. Like, I have notifications on several projects, and literally, sometimes I'm overwhelmed by the amount of questions and things that pass by. So it's crucial that you have a process in place that helps you handle those issues. Well, use meaningful labels. Again, here there is no silver bullet. Every project has its own way of managing them. But leverage GitHub Actions. Specifically, there is an action called GitHub Scripts that allows you to essentially make small API calls against GitHub. So you can have a really simple action which reacts on a label. For example, you can say, I had the label needs reproducer, and then GitHub Action will comment like, hey, this issue doesn't have a reproducer. Or you can go one step further and analyze the body of the issue and say like, I haven't found a link to a project under your username. I think you forgot to add a reproducer. How about you do it? So all of those processes are crucial and help you scale up on the issue management. Stalebot. This is controversial. Someone like it, someone don't like it. We have a lot of issue that gets stale, so for us it's actually useful. Canned responses. This is a feature of GitHub that not many people know, but you can create a set of templates for your answers in your profile that you can fire with a keyboard shortcut and immediately responds with like, hey, thank you very much for your issue, but we don't do that. Or this is a question, put it on Stack Overflow, and so on. And all of our bots are actually documented on the React Native website, so you can jump on over there and see how we do issue triaging and which labels we use and so on. I mean, I'm not saying that we are great at doing it. We try to do our best. There is space for improvements, but again, like try to get inspired by other projects as well. What I think it goes one step further when thinking about issue triaging and issue management is making sure you design what I call self-service APIs. So you don't want the user to reach your issue tracker because your tool is smart enough that provides them relevant information. So use error messages which have context. If some of you ever use the the Rust compiler, they're doing an amazing job. They have like codes for every error so that you can like just Google that code and immediately understand what is the failure because you jump on the error, like on the page for that specific error. Or other tools like, we do have one called React Native Doctor Flutter has one as well. So credit to them, but they might have copied us. But anyway, so the React Native Doctor tool allows you to basically do like an inspection of your environment and check which environment variables are set, if you have the SDK properly configured, and so on. And it's really useful for the user to do like the first round of troubleshooting. And other tools like React Native Info, which dumps your environment and is a requirement for our issues. Like, I don't want to ask you which version of Java you have installed, like, and on every issue someone is reporting. That adds a lot of friction. So still on these reproducers, like small projects that reproduce the failure that the user is reporting, I'm a big fan of having mandatory reproducers. And those are easy to request if you have a good test coverage. So generally, like a reproducer can just be a failing test case. Like, show me a test that exercises my library and breaks it. That's the best thing I can have to fix it. Or create a repo using our init command and do a change to that repo and destroy the framework. I'm happy to fix it. And also, we have another feature called Snack. This is developed by one of our partners, but it essentially allows you to run React Native on browser. So you will have an Android or iOS simulator on browser. You can type the code there and show me like how the border of a button is, I don't know, has the wrong thickness, and just send over that link. I will be able to look immediately inside it. So we talked a lot about issues, but the other side of the medal is also pull requests. And again, managing them is also a challenge because that's not just answering to people, it's merging them, reviewing them, and so on. Again, you need a process. GitHub offers you a set of tools like the code owners, which allows to define areas of your code base which should be like assigned by default to specific reviewers. And one tool that we use a lot is Danger. If you don't know Danger, their motto is something like, stop saying you need to do this on a pull request. So essentially, it's a tool that automates a lot of steps in the review process. For example, we have a changelog entry that you need to have in your pull request body that will be used when we generate the changelog. We don't want to really ask every time, hey, the changelog, you forgot to add the changelog, or the format is wrong. We have a script that essentially verifies it and then prints a message and tells you like, hey, this is missing. Hey, you're touching a file that will require like, I don't know, manual reviews and so on. This can actually automate a lot of things, and it's a great tool. So I know it's a little bit of investment at first, but the amount of times you save because of those tools is tremendous. And also, the crucial point for pull requests, and again, here we get back to the duality of having like an internal org and an external word, is to make sure that the two words are connected. So we do have like a bot that whenever we receive a pull request externally, it creates a post on our internal board and says like, hey, a new pull request has arrived, and this is the body, this is the link to the pull request, and also tries to blame, in a sense, who could be a good reviewer for that pull request. It pings the person, and so we are aware of it, and this sort of like speeds up the review process, ideally. And the whole point behind this is like, if you have Slack, make sure you have a channel where those pull requests are ending. If you have Discord or so, like you don't want those pull requests to sit in your GitHub repo like unanswered for days because you're losing meaningful contributions. Okay, so now you are up and running, you have your project, like you're good at managing issues and you're good at managing pull requests, everyone is happy. Well, what happens next? Your project gets to the maturity phase. And at this point is where things get complicated. Like, there are, again, some challenges that are specific to bigger projects here. One is releases. So, yeah, we just released a point release for 070, and as I was saying at the beginning, yeah, creating essentially a tarball that gets downloaded 1 million times a week, well, as its consequences. Like, you want to make sure that when that stuff goes out, it's working well. So how do we do that? We do have a set of roles that are responsible of managing our release. So the first role is the release captain. This is usually, most likely, a Meta employee, and is the person that drives the release process and is essentially the point of contact. He or she is responsible of making the final call on any critical decision. So that is the person that would say, yes, these things goes in the release, or not, it will not. We have also an external role called the release co-pilot, and this is generally someone from a partner company, being Microsoft, Shopify, or Coinbase, Tesla, some of the companies we collaborate with. And yeah, they basically support the release process as a whole, and they have more like a comms kind of role. Essentially, they communicate that a new release is out, they write all the communication about it, they prepare the blog post for the new release, and so on. We obviously, this sounds trivial if the library is small, but as the library gets big, those roles are kind of heavy. Like, you have a lot of coordination to do, a lot of pull requests that wants to get in the release. So we have a rotation with shadow roles. So there is also a shadow release captain and a shadow release co-pilot, which are like turning around. So if the release captain goes on PTO, on vacation, they should be able to do that. Alongside those 4 persons, there is a group of release supporters. So people from the community which join on a voluntary basis this program, and they basically help testing the release candidates. They just try a new release before the stable has been cut, and they tell us, hey, like I don't know, I updated my app on this version and it breaks badly, I can't build, or so. To coordinate all of these, we have been using the GitHub discussion feature, which actually works quite well. And especially, like, I saw projects in the past using GitHub issues, not discussions, and there it's really hard to have like threaded conversations. Like, it really gets out of hand quite easily. So having those focused conversation on like, hey, we are about to release that. List down all the problems you had, and we're going to answer one by one. It works really well for us. Again, all of this is documented on our website. We strive to have this process as transparent as possible. Another challenge which you might face when you do big libraries with big API surfaces are migrations. Maybe you want to change some like critical parts of your internals, or you want to sort of ask your users to have a mind shift because you're changing some internals. What we've been using is, again, GitHub discussions. We create those working groups. So, for example, now we are rolling out what is called the new architecture. So it's like a lot of changes in the internals of our engines. And we create this discussion repo is invite only. So sometimes we either decide a group of people which we believe are relevant to the conversation to keep it focused, or we have like a sign-up form where you can apply to join. And you're going to like find focused discussions on specific topics like deep dives and documentations and so on. Again, another crucial point when you grow is really defining what support means for your library. And here I want to stress the importance of this because I saw so many open source maintainers getting burned out just because they wanted to support every possible version of Android and support every possible feature out there. Well, really, you can't help everyone. Trust me, like you will reach one point if your library scales where you need to make a call, you need to ignore someone, you need to really understand where is the noise and where is the valuable signal. On this, we have a strong policy in defining which versions of React Native are actually supported. And supported for us means that if someone reports a bug on that version, we are committed to release a point release for that version. So again, define clear expectations like the one I just said. And on these, there are like plenty of tools out there with their own support policy. I think Node.js is doing like a great job here in defining what support is for them with like clear windows. What is a LTS? So if you don't want to update that often, you can jump on their LTS distribution and so on. And again, I really believe that in this space, the haha effect doesn't really work. Like the surprise effect, it's no, don't do that. Like users want to know how long a thing is supported, if they can rely on that. Making like drastical changes without pre-announcements is the recipe for failure. So make sure you properly communicate your changes. That's why it's crucial that as your library grows, you build up on external engagement. And on our end, we do have a Twitter account. We have conferences organized by partners that we participate and we help organizing, and podcasts and so on. But most importantly is also surveys. This is not regular, but we run the state of React, and essentially it happens every 2 years, more or less. We ask the community, like, what you don't like what it works for you, what it doesn't work for you, which state management library you use, and so on. And it's really important that you build this feedback loop with your users. Again, Reddit AMA also work. If you have like a big Reddit community, this is again typical of bigger libraries and frameworks. But talking about engagement is not just about external engagement, like your community, is also about internal engagement. How do you get the people in your org excited to do open source? Again, I don't have a silver bullet answer for this, but one thing we have been doing are those badges. People love badges. So we do have an internal profile at Meta where like everyone can sort of create a script to award badges to other employees. And we have those open source badges. So you will receive a badge when you do your first public pull request, or when you help a pull request to be merged, or when you comment on an issue, and so on. And there are like obviously, you know, bronze, silver, gold, and so on, and people love them. So yeah, this is like it's a simple way to create engagement internally because people really like those. So make sure that you don't forget about your internal community within your org, and they're all on board on doing open source. And now to the last phase of the life cycle of an open source project, and this is what I call the graduation. And on here, and I get inspired by this article, is organizational structure of open source projects. A life cycle approach. And they define the life cycle of an open source project in a similar way as a structured my talk. First, there is an introduction where the project starts. Then there is the growth phase, like everyone is excited, everyone tries it. Then there is the maturity. And then what's next? Well, what's next is the decline or revive. Decline. How many dependency injection framework we changed over the years? You know, there was a time where RxJava was a thing, and I don't know, maybe people are still using it, but there was a time where at droidcon the agenda was all about RxJava, and now we passed that phase, luckily, or I don't know. But yeah, like, you know, libraries come and go. So like sometimes they just die essentially, or the user base just shrinks and they don't solve the problem that they were supposed to solve anymore because there might be a new library out there, there might be a new framework, or there is a new use case. Maybe there is a new platform and that framework fits that platform really well. So there is like a revive, that project restarts. So maybe there was a missing API, and that API got implemented, and that use case that previously was not covered, now it's covered. So my take here is, well, be brave and try to adapt to what your community asks for, without saying yes to everyone, as I said before. Again, no silver bullet here, but be brave in doing actions like archiving a project. Like, if you feel that that project is not solving any need anymore, you're probably wasting your time supporting it, and you might just say like, hey, there is another project which is doing a better job. We did that with Draft.js. We say like, hey, this is here, we're not gonna support it anymore, end of December, make sure you migrate somewhere else, this is the alternative, that's it, this library is gone, like it was great till it lasted. Or another thing which I would really love open source projects to do more often is being transferred. So one thing that we did earlier this year is transferring Jest to the OpenJS Foundation. So you probably don't know Jest, but it's essentially the JUnit of web, of JavaScript. It's probably the most popular testing framework for JavaScript. It was under Facebook. We created it, we maintained it, it solved all of our needs. We were essentially not maintaining that anymore. Actually, there was a group of maintainers which was outside the company, and they were really active. And so it made no sense anymore that that project stayed under the GitHub Facebook org. So we donated to a foundation, and so that the foundation is responsible of the future of this project, and they will make sure that there are resources to let this project grow and reach success. Sadly, I haven't seen many mobile projects being transferred to foundations. I think this is not a thing maybe in the mobile space, both Android and iOS. But I wish to see more projects not being like, locked inside the organization, but actually being more like in an open space where everyone can contribute, and it's not just like, the company being the ultimate maintainer of those. And so with this, to wrap up, this is the life cycle of an open source project. I hope I inspired you today in doing more open source, putting your project out. I want to give one last suggestion. If you're looking into scaling open source within your organization, make sure you check the todogroup.org website. So the Todo Group is a collection of companies which are committed to do better open source. And they provide, again, tools and documentation which are not just like open source projects, but they're like tools to maintain and have healthy open source project. On this space specifically, make sure you get a OSPO, which stands for Open Source Program Officer, which can be either a person or a team, which are responsible of making sure that open source within your org is healthy. There are processes, everything works fine. If you're a bigger org, you might need a CLA process, which is a contributor license agreement. I will not deep dive into that. But last thing is, again, if you want to scale, if you think you're going to have a lot of repositories out there, one tool that is helpful is the REPL linter from the Todo Group. The REPL linter is a linter which doesn't check your code, actually checks your repo for healthiness. So we'll check basic stuff like is there README, is there license, and so on. Checks there also GitHub is doing. This is a bit more refined and also allows to scale it towards multiple projects. And with this, well, if I've seen further, it is by standing on the shoulder of giants. This is actually a quote by Newton. And again, I hope I inspired you today. We probably, we are in a huge debt with the open source community. I also am in a huge debt with the open source community. We all are. And I hope that if you had in mind to do some open source contributions and you were lazy, you didn't know where to start it, today you got some inspiration. And with this, well, I want to recall on how all of our projects, most of our projects are open source and contributions are more than welcome. And thank you very much for listening.